Is it safe to carry your gun with a round in the chamber? We'll look at how striker-fired pistols like Glock stay safe even with a round chambered, and compare them to double-action pistols and even old-school revolvers. What is carrying chambered? Carrying chambered means your pistol has a live round in the chamber, ready to fire when you press the trigger. A lot of folks, especially newer shooters, worry that this is dangerous. They picture their gun just going off in the holster. Now let's be clear, unless you're carrying a busted relic from 1910 or an unsafe holster, modern firearms won't discharge unless you deliberately pull the trigger, aside from a recent anomaly that will still not be named. Today's pistols are engineered with multiple internal safeties to prevent negligent discharges, so let's get into how those work. How striker-fired pistols stay safe. All right, let's start with the most misunderstood gun on earth, the Glock. Now, all these firearms are clear, and as you can see here, so is the Glock. But people say that the Glock has no safeties. Well, that's not actually true. Glock actually has 3 safeties. Glock safe action system. So first you have your trigger safety. It's that tiny little lever in the middle of the trigger. If it's not pressed straight back, the trigger won't move at all, as you can see here. And then it has a firing pin block, or drop safety. It's a spring-loaded plunger that physically blocks the firing pin unless the trigger is pulled. So that means if you have the gun racked and you don't pull the trigger, even if you drop it, it can't go off. And then lastly, you have your trigger bar disconnect. The striker stays partially cocked and held back, but the trigger must be pulled to release it. No pull, no boom. Holster real-world safety. Now, let me be clear, none of these safeties matter if your holster doesn't protect your trigger. That goes for all gun types. A good Kydex holster that holds its shape and covers the trigger is essential. Some modern leather holsters with a retention clip can also work. So what makes a solid holster? It covers the trigger completely, it has strong retention, it doesn't collapse, and it doesn't allow anything to press into the trigger guard. Whether you carry appendix, 3 o'clock, or even off body, your holster is what keeps your trigger safe between your hands and the gun. Double action, single action pistols. Now let's look at hammer-fired double action, single action pistols like the Sig P320, CZ75, or like this Beretta 92. Now this one is also clear. You can see here, nothing in the chamber, good to go. Now this seemed to be the most talked about type of firearm in the comments for the last video on having one in the chamber. Now here's what makes them different. Safety features. They have a very, very long 9 to 12 pound trigger pull, very heavy. They have a manual decocker that lowers the hammer. That's this guy here. If I push this, you're gonna see the hammer is gonna go up. So what this is actually doing is when you turn on the decocker, it's rotating and blocking the ability for that hammer to hit that striking pin. So when I release the hammer, it's just gonna hit the body. And then you also have a firing pin block, which prevents firing unless the trigger is pulled, same as striker-fired pistols. On this one, you can actually see it right here. If I pull the trigger, you'll see this go up. That's your firing pin block safety. When that goes up, that means this gun is ready to fire. So if I charge this gun, and the hammer is back, and I go up here, you'll see when I do the decocker, that firing pin block safety here, that doesn't move. So that means that gun cannot fire in that case because that firing pin block safety is still blocking it. But now if I cock it again, and you'll see when I pull the trigger, you're gonna see that this goes up, and that allows it to fire. Now, some folks like that long, heavy first pull because it adds a deliberate step before the gun fires, but it's still chambered and it's just as ready. Now, one trick I was taught recently is that some of these types of firearms can be half-cocked to prevent the hammer from being able to be hit forward by accident. So by half-cock, what I mean is I can take this and just partially move it, and in that instance, it's not gonna be able to be knocked forward. So I can sit here, and you can hit the back of this with a hammer. You can beat the crap out of this hammer. It's still not gonna let it fire. But if I pull the trigger, because it's double action, it's still gonna fully cycle. Now, many also have an internal safety where even if the hammer is cocked back and accidentally goes forward unexpectedly, which would require a total internal failure, the hammer can't actually hit the firing pin because it's blocked internally unless the trigger is pulled. Revolvers, the original safe carry. And then there's the OG, a double action revolver, which many of you praised in the comments. This one is also unloaded. People have carried these loaded and chambered since the Old West. So now, as many people know, they have very long double action pulls. And then if you go single action, it's extremely light. So in this case, to me, this feels like it's maybe a pound, pound and a half. So it's a hair trigger in single action mode. But there's no external safeties from most models. There are a few that are made for children that do. Now, the internal transfer bar or the hammer block actually prevent drop firing. Now, it's primitive, but it's incredibly safe. The internal transfer bar must be in the correct position to transfer the energy from the hammer to the firing pin. This only happens when the trigger is fully pulled. Otherwise, the hammer, even if it's allowed to slam home, never contacts the firing pin. Then there's also the hammer block type, which works the exact opposite way. The hammer can hit the firing pin if released, in this case. So if the hammer block actually goes in between the firing pin and the hammer, it prevents the hammer from making contact. Now, if you've been carrying a revolver with an exposed hammer and no transfer bar, maybe don't load every chamber, but anything made in the last 50 years, you're probably good to go. Why unchambered carry is riskier. Carrying unchambered seems safer until you need to use your gun. You need two hands to rack it or fancy one-handed skills, which most people don't have. You risk fumbling under adrenaline. You add steps when time is everything. You may also short stroke it and jam it or cause a malfunction. Your draw stroke should lead to a bang, not rack, uh-oh. The safest gun is the one you're trained to use and the one that's ready when you are. Make sure you can operate whichever firearm type and carry condition that you choose, including one-handed. Top 3 myths about chambered carry. Let's knock out the top 3 myths about carrying chambered. Myth number 1, it'll go off in your holster. Not unless something pulls the trigger, period. Or in cases like the P320, there was a manufacturing defect, which usually quickly gets found and recalled or quietly upgraded. Myth number 2, you don't need a round chambered, you'll have time. I think I've shown in a majority of my videos recently that you may not have time. You may not be able to functionally do what you need to do when the time comes. And myth number 3, manual safeties are always safer. Only if you train with them. Hesitation kills, and these can fail as well. Stop treating your gun like a hand grenade. It won't go off just sitting there. Drop tests and safety proof. Now let's talk testing. Glocks, Berettas, Smith & Wesson, they've all been torture tested by law enforcement and military agencies. Examples: Glock passed the FBI drop test at multiple angles, including on Garand thumb. Beretta has been battle-proven for reliability and safety for decades. Springfield, Walther, and HK all use firing pin blocks and disconnects. Unless you're carrying an unsafe relic or a broken pistol, you're good. So what really keeps you safe? Let's get real. Safeties are great, but the best safety is a quality holster, a trained mind, a disciplined finger, and respect for the gun, not fear of it. Modern pistols are made to be carried with a round chambered. That's not a bug, that's a feature. Train like your life depends on it, because one day, it might. So, is it safe to carry chambered? Yes, if your gun is modern, your holster is solid, and your training is on point. Don't let fear stop you from being prepared. Drop a comment below. Do you carry chambered? And if so, which type of firearm do you trust? Like and subscribe to this video if it cleared things up for you. Check out these other videos to keep on learning, and I'll see you on the next one.